Good evening. Thank you so much for your time. In the main, what reports are you getting about how successful reopening of independent schools has been today?
Good afternoon, Sally, and to the listeners. Today, not many of our schools did open, but some did actually open. But ISASA schools are actually quite well connected and know how to actually function under COVID conditions. Most of our schools do have Wi-Fi. Well, I heard about the other notice. And so most of our schools went on either Teams, Zoom, or Google Classrooms and used those electronic platforms last year. Also, what they have done is that they used WhatsApp and also work packs to drop off by parents. So our schools, as ISASA anyway, we are well and able to be able to open up. But what has happened is that due to the high number of COVID transmissions at the moment, most of our schools have elected to open up on Monday rather than today.
That's a really interesting one, because I was going to ask you what sort of percentage, if you're able to give us a ballpark, on what percentage of teachers and pupils are perhaps not present due to COVID infections. I mean, what sort of percentages are we talking in terms of infections among independent schools at the moment?
So far, Sally, we actually have not heard any fatalities in terms of teachers or children in our schools. We will be asking that to our members next week. But really, when we look at last year, the transmission rates at schools were quite low. And also what happened quite effectively, as planned by the public health professionals, was that if somebody had been in contact or had tested positive in a node, either in the classroom, everybody was tracked. And because we've got such stringent COVID conditions, it was very easy for those part of that school to be asked for people to stay home, quarantine, and only reopen after.
I suppose the reason I'm asking, sorry to interrupt. Yes.
But also,
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify, I don't think my question was clear, is that the reason I'm asking now is because it's post-holidays. And while schools are very stringent, it's impossible for schools to control what pupils and what parents allow in terms of children exposing themselves potentially to COVID-19. So I was wondering if you were getting reports in now, as the school year is about to get underway, of how many kids are actually sick with COVID, how many are actually COVID positive, what percentage of children have been affected. Are you getting any data coming through yet?
No, not yet. But what we did learn, Sally, and I think there's a very good point on your side, is that we know that the rages that happened in December, those rages that happened were seen as super spreader events. And the Department of Health sent a notification, which we also sent to our members, that everybody who had gone on to rage had to self-isolate. So we don't know at this point what the numbers look like, but that's why most of the ISASA schools are actually opening on Monday, and many of them are not open today.
All right, I'm going to try and persist with one last question. We have a bit of a dodgy line. But what is your expectation around, we know that government is considering what to do about schools. We know, for example, in Gauteng, we haven't yet reached the peak of our second wave. Are you really expecting that schools may well be shut down again before they've even properly opened?
No, what I do expect is that many of our schools are going to not open for every single grade. And I suspect that what we're going to have is going to have a combination. So a smaller number of students in person and the majority of students actually on online platforms.
And I suppose that's quite a comforting thought in a way, for all the sickening sense of, oh, here we go again in 2021. The reality is we have learned an awful lot about how to live alongside this virus, haven't we, Lebogang?
Exactly. I fully agree with you, Sally. And also that's why I was saying the monitoring is going to be done. And also because we had to, during lockdown, go straight onto online learning, our schools are very well aware and able to actually move swiftly, either to have all the school back or part of the school back and some of the school online, and a combination of both. And many of our members are actually not opening up entirely on Monday, but only are allowing grades 0000 and grade 8 and maybe matrics to come in and see how things are going.
Thank you so much for chatting to us this evening. That was Lebogang Monjani, Executive Director of ISASA, the Independent Schools Association of Southern Africa, telling us that while some private schools have opened today, a majority have not. And in part, that's because they're assessing how many kids might have COVID-19.